So here's Jessie J performing at V-Fest. The audience aged mostly from 16 to 25. This audience is attracted to her because she is cool, young, and exciting to listen to and watch. And this is me at the festival. Because the music industry is usually behind closed doors, we only see the music once it's finished. But it's interesting to see that, like a friend of mine, for example, who has started at the bottom putting YouTube videos on and hoping people will see them to be given a record deal. Seeing how much hard work goes into it is really interesting, as you do not normally realise what goes into it just because it is a 3-minute song. I'm now going to do an interview with Ray Levy, who once owned a record store in the 80s and a record company. I thought he'd be an interesting person to interview as he has been through it all.
Completely different model we had in those days, vinyl, cassettes, CDs later on. There were no such things as downloads or streaming. We had record stores. There were about 3,000 I think in the 80s, and today there's very, very few independent stores left. So it was a completely different model. Today you've just got supermarkets and of course HMV and maybe a few record stores. But there's no proper top 20 as it was years ago, no vinyls. Well, I would say certainly downloads have certainly knocked out all the record stores, because you've got to remember now with downloads and streaming, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, they are your stores, they are your shops, they're your retail outlets. And if someone hears a track on the TV or on the radio, straight away they'll download it and stream it. Whereas years ago they would go into record stores and say, have you got such and such a record? I personally think the actual feel and the buzz has gone out of the industry, because you can't pick up the album and read the notes, etc. Yes, recorded music is very important to the artist now, through the streaming and the downloading, iTunes getting money from that, and of course advertising tours, merchandising. They have a much better way to get to a much larger audience than they've ever had, going back to the 80s and the 90s and the 60s. But they are very, very precious with all the stuff that they record and they write, and quite rightly so. But they get to a much bigger audience, and really just completely instantly. To promote the artist and the actual model is exactly the same as it was probably 10, 20, 30 years ago. You need the radio plugger to get into Radio 1, local radio to do the plugging for that. You need someone to cover TV. You need a PR company to cover press. You also need someone now to set everything up on Amazon and iTunes, and the artist has to be around to promote everything. You can spend a fortune on promoting, but it doesn't always work, because sometimes the producers or the PR or the press won't pick up on it, and other times it will do, and then of course you can TV advertise. But it doesn't matter how much you spend and how much effort you put into it, at the end of the day, if Joe Public don't like what you're showing to them, they won't buy it. If they do like it and you get it right, then of course the sky's the limit. But basically the model for promoting a new release or a new band is exactly the same. That's one of the most interesting questions that everybody asks everybody else. Is it viable? Yes, but in a completely different way. It is viable, but you've got to understand now it's changed, because as we've said before, of the downloading, streaming tracks, YouTube. It is very, very viable, but you can still lose a lot of money if you don't get it right. It's down to promotion and going on Amazon, going on TV. It's really just the same. Is it viable? Yes, but it's still a massive, massive gamble. Simon Cowell is a bit like Marmite. You either like it or you don't like it. Personally, I think he's had a tremendous influence on the music industry, because he's put on a TV show, a reality type of show, and he's brought it into people's front rooms where everybody gets a chance, and millions of people have watched it. They bought the albums that from the successful winners, and maybe then they bought something else, similar. On the downside, these are quick fix artists. They've had no apprenticeship. They haven't travelled up and down motorways like the Stones did, played in awful clubs in cellars, and learn how to play live. So it's really a little bit of a love-hate, isn't it? Personally, I think he's done great, and good for him. It's people that are very talented or great musicians seem to hate him, but I actually think he has brought something different into everybody's lives, although I think it's all a little bit overdone now.
Thank you very much, Ray. Whilst talking to my dad, who is a record producer, I asked him about advertising and PR. He told me that PR is created for a number of reasons, sometimes for the branding of artists, but also for creating PR between the record company and the artists themselves. So, for example, Beyoncé performed at her Mrs. Carter World Tour in London. When she arrived, there would have been about 3 to 4 massive billboards that she would have passed on the way to where she was staying, purely to make her feel a connection to the place and make her feel good, as well as advertising the show, of course.